During the installation process, or while poking around Drupal's administration pages on your own, you might have noticed something like, cron has not run, or to check for updates you may need to run cron. Or you might have installed a module that fetches information periodically from the internet, such as a news aggregator, but then find that it's not working. That's because Drupal has to run certain system-level processes periodically, but requires an outside program to do so with the permissions required. That program is called cron, and we'll show you how to configure it to make Drupal happy. We'll also tell you about a handy Drupal module called Poor Man's Cron, which you'll learn to install later in the course. Essentially, your goal is to force a visit to a certain Drupal page once in a while. That page is cron.php, which is spelled cron.php, and the file is located at the top of your Drupal directory. So by typing in your site address, in our case, that's localhost, followed by cron.php, we can visit that page. Let's do that now. Looks like nothing happened, doesn't it? Well, let's go back to our Drupal site and take a look at our administration pages, and then go down to the status report, and we'll see something here. Cron maintenance task last run 12 seconds ago. That was when we visited the cron.php page. So even though it doesn't have any interface back to us, it is doing something. And what cron does may be very important to your Drupal site. Your goal is to make that process happen occasionally and automatically. Cron is your tool. For Drupal users, the #1 place for instructions on how to use cron is drupal.org/cron. There you'll see all sorts of information about how to configure cron. There are essentially 3 ways to make cron run. The 3 ways to run cron are: first, by running it on your computer, that is to say, on the server. Secondly, by using an outside cron helper such as webcron.org. And third, by using the module we mentioned earlier, which is called Poor Man's Cron. We'll show you once again how to install that module in another video in the series. We'll show you how to edit the cron in Unix. For Windows users, the Task Scheduler function is a good replacement for cron. A good explanation of how to use this function can be found at the Drupal.org website. Follow the URL below for more information. In order to edit it in Unix, on the Mac you'll have to go into a terminal program. If you're using a remote server, you may have to use a shell program. On the Mac, we double-click on the terminal program, and from here, we can enter commands as we like. The first thing that we need to do is find the program that's going to visit the cron page, in other words, a text-based web browser. The 2 big ones are called links and wget, and there's also a curl. We'll try finding each of these. In Unix, you can do so by saying where is links. We don't seem to have that, so let's try where is wget. Finally, where is curl? Aha, we do have curl. We take a note of that location, which in this case is usr/bin/curl. Now that we know how we'll visit that cron.php page on your Drupal site, we need to make it happen periodically. Cron is unusual. It relies on the precise configuration of a text file that you can't edit directly, and it's in an obscure and obfuscated format. In Unix, you configure cron through a command line interface, which is called crontab. The way that we do that is by typing crontab -e, which means edit. And there it is. Right now, our cron tab is empty. I'm going to tell you the exact keys to enter because we're now in a program called VI. You may be using a different sort of editor on your server. Depending on which web browser you found, whether it's links or wget or curl, you can find instructions on how to set up your cron tab in the scripts folder, which is inside your Drupal installation. So I'm going to go there right now. Inside here, you'll find some sample scripts. Since the one that we found was called curl, I'm going to open that up. So here we've opened up the sample curl command. Then I'm going to go back to my terminal and enter that command. It's curl --silent --compressed, and then we need to put in the address of the server. In this case, instead of example.com, we say http://localhost/cron.php. Now, our job is not completely finished because although we've given the command, We haven't yet said how frequently or when we want that command to be run. For that, once again, we can go back to the page on Drupal.org, configuring cron jobs, and it will give you a sense of how cron tabs are set up. The way that it works is that there are 5 fields at the beginning, which stand for minutes, hours, days of the month, months of the year, and then day of the week. We don't have to worry about any of those last 4 because we're going to want our cron to run at least once an hour. So in this first field, we will say at which point after the hour we want it to run. In this example that's given on Drupal.org, it runs at 45 minutes after the hour. Let's go back to our example and make it happen also at 45 minutes after the hour. So 45 space star, 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 star. You can also make it run much more frequently than that. For example, every minute, if you were to replace the 45 with 0-59. For other information about the various kinds of ways you can control cron, look at the cron page on the Drupal.org website. The second thing that we need to do is we have to tell our computer where exactly we're going to find that curl program. Now you might remember that we had usr/bin/curl. Well, we enter that here, /usr/bin/curl. So now we've entered when we want cron to run, what program we want it to run, what sort of options we want it to run with, and again, this was just copied from the text that's in that scripts folder, and exactly where we want it to run. In order to get out of that, we will hit Escape on our keyboard, then :WQ if you're using VI. Again, if you're using a different editor, you'll use whatever commands you use to get out of that, and hit Return. Now we're told that we've installed the new cron tab, and we're ready to go. Now we have installed cron, so our Drupal website will be updated at least once an hour. In our case, it'll happen at 45 minutes after each hour. It's unfortunate that something so critical to Drupal's operation is so hard to configure, but the good news is you have one other option. If you go to webcron.org, this is an outside service that will let you set up a cron system on your Drupal site from an outside place. This is somewhat complex to set up as well, and we won't go into all the details. If you, like me, speak English as your first language, the first thing you'll want to do is click on the British flag down here, and then follow the instructions. The good news is, once you have cron set up, whether it's through webcron.org, Poor Man's Cron, or the command line interface I gave you before, you pretty much never have to touch it again. Good luck.